Financial Matters.
And it is Financial Matters. Without any further ado, your favorite, Dr. Frank Magwegwe, is joining us. We're speaking about access to financial education. How much do you know about the world of finance, and how important is that knowledge in your everyday life? We know that today we heard about consumer inflation went up all the way to 7% from 6.9%. And we want to know from you, how much do we really know and invest in access to financial education? Dr. Frank, thanks for joining us. Great talking to you as usual. I wanted you to confirm that it's not me that you are allergic to. You are staying away so that you don't spread the germs, right?
Yes, and you are taking me up with your intro the show because, you were saying you know about financial matters. I'm not sure about, about being sick and all that. And you took me back to beginning of last year,
yes,
where I had COVID, and I was slowly getting worse, and my wife kept on saying, maybe you need to go back and see the beauty. But I kept on, ordering more stuff on one of the online dispensaries.
Yeah.
To cut a long story short,
yeah,
I ended up admitted. By the time I went,
yeah,
they said I should have come like 3 days before, and I was admitted for a couple of days.
Oh, no.
Because of complications of COVID. Beginning of 2022, and I learned my lesson there. I didn't know quite a bit about finance.
Yeah.
I know very little about, my body. And if you tell me I'm not well, I must go and get help from the experts. And of course, what a lovely way to start our show, because what we're saying in a jest way is to say, one needs to know what they don't know.
Yeah.
Finance. It's so important. You just made the example now of consumer financial inflation has gone up. That's for an individual to pause and say, so what does this actually mean? If I were to explain it to my child,
sure, what
would I say has happened? And the inspiration for today came from me yesterday saying, you know what, I'm not going to be that person who's just going to give the headline and then I comment on the president's speech yesterday. You mean right? I downloaded it, I printed it, I had my highlighter, and I read what the president said in the Northern Cape, right?
Yeah.
And I noticed as I was doing that, he mentioned education 14 times, 14 times, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking about things like, the Bill of Rights says the government has a right to provide everyone with basic access to education, as an example, to ensure every child gets a solid foundation for social and educational development, and the amazing work the education department has started doing on ECDs, early childhood development. And suddenly I say to myself, this is such an interesting framework to think about financial education, because we have ECD, and then we've got primary, right? We even have junior primary, senior primary, then we've got high school. And suddenly I say to myself, I wonder how do our wonderful Cape Talk and 702 listeners think about where they are with their financial education. Are they in ECD? Are they in senior primary? Are there some who say, no, hey, me, I'm in postgraduate? Because it's so interesting then for them to tell us, how do they know? How do they learn about financial education? How do they decide they are at high school level? They are at matric level. How do they continually improve it? So I thought, let's make today kind of a storytelling, a fun way, but of really learning, where do we find financial education? Can we structure it as we do for typical education, all the way from ECD, lower, junior primary, senior primary, all the way to tertiary? Do people think of financial education like that? That's what you're looking for to hear from our wonderful listeners.
Certainly. And as we kick off that, to really understand about financial education, where are we in all those streams? As you've said, ECD all the way to PhD level and beyond. Firstly, the importance of financial education, Dr. Frank Magwegwe. You've spoken about it a million times, but let's start right there. We walk around thinking that we do know about it, and there's no need to really intensify our knowledge or our access to that education, financial education. We think, man, I know these things. I know there's bank account and whatever else, there's insurance, that's sufficient. But we don't know what we don't know. And what we don't know becomes a serious problem when we are faced with these financial issues and putting the monthly budget together. It doesn't come together when there's an emergency. So let's start off first with that, maybe in a brief crystal way. Why is it important for us to intensify that knowledge, and where should we become comfortable to say, now I know?
What a beautiful question. You know, in my work, both at Nedbank and at GIBS, one of the things we've realized, and it's also confirmed by the likes of the National Treasury, for example, when they do the benchmark study that tells us where are South Africans as far as financial education is concerned. So, financial education is very low, not only in SA, but globally. Why is it important before we unpack why is it low? Let's say, why do we need to enhance our levels of financial education? It is simply this. There is a direct link between financial education and financial behaviors. Financial behavior is what we see at the end of the month, where we've run out of money, right? That is what we see on our credit score when it's telling us it's very low because we've got outstanding payments that we haven't made. That is what leads ultimately to an individual to end up unable to pay the financial institutions that they owe, and they end up in formal, say, debt counseling. So all those that I talked about, not enough money at the end of the month, not enough to pay school fees, lots of financial stress because I don't know where I'm going to find money to buy my child a textbook or a pair of shoes, or a poor credit record. Those are all symptoms. Right? They're just telling us there is something about this individual and how they are managing money. And before we get in trouble with 702 listeners and our Cape Talk listeners, this is irrespective of how much money. In other words, this is irrespective of whether you are a low-income earner, a middle-income earner, a high-income earner. We all need financial education. We all are affected by our financial behaviors. So it's important because to get to the root of why you behave in certain ways with your money, that often that knowledge, you get it when you sit down and say, but I don't think I really know how to manage my money well. You know, that kind of honesty, because we are hardly trained formally to manage money. We go through the education system. If you are fortunate, there's a little bit perhaps in life orientation where they talk a little bit about personal finance. Then off you go to tertiary or off to the world of work. There is no time and opportunity to really go through a structured curriculum or a structured way of learning about how to manage your finances. So it's when we don't know what happens to us, often we end up making big financial mistakes. That is the main reason why we should know about finances and commit to improve our level of financial education, is to avoid mistakes that come as a result of just not even knowing the level of knowledge is low. Let me give a quick example. A person who says, you know what, I'm not good at cooking. What do? They get a cookery book, or they go on a program to learn how to cook better. But they start by acknowledging, I am a bad cook.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So that's a simple. Someone who wants to run a 5K, they say to themselves, I don't know how to run a 5K at least, or a 10K. What do I eat? What shoes do I wear on the day that I'm running? Do I wear very brand new shoes on the day I'm trying to run? You say, I don't know. You Google it or you ask other runners. We need the same for finance, but it doesn't happen. People don't even acknowledge what they don't know.
Sure.
And they get into financial problems as a result of that, like the ones I just summarized.
I would like to know from you, because I think you summarized it brilliantly, Dr. Frank Magwegwe, when you said that it really pierces through all sorts of spheres of individuals. Financial education, from someone who sweeps the floor to the CEO of a very prominent company who's taking decisions about millions and millions of rands in their own company. However, personally, they may be the worst person to handle finances in their own lives. So this education hits us all indiscriminately. But then, where do we go to access this information? With cooking, we can go to a cooking school. Does it mean I must go to GIBS? I must register at GIBS. I'm already doing so many other things, Dr. Frank, and maybe I don't even have money to go to GIBS. Where should I get this financial? How do I access this financial education?
Our government and many governments across the world, they have realized this problem that we're talking about, that there is no formal, in most countries, way to introduce young people to this idea of it's important to learn how to manage your money, and they go through it and move from kind of level 1, level 2, and go higher. So what have they done? Number one, in SA, like many other countries, financial services companies, they are mandated as part of their conditions for their license, whether it's a banking license, if you're a bank, or it's an insurance license, if you're an insurer, or an asset management company, the unit trust companies that invest and grow money for us. All those institutions, they have a responsibility to provide financial education. So that's one way we get it. So that is why when you go to a website of any financial services company, you would find some information around basic levels of financial education. In other words, we're talking about how to budget, how to track your expenses, to a little bit more around what they say, what is unit trust, what is the registered day deposit account, what is inflation. That's one way we get. But the starting point is for an individual to really say, you know what, if I were to think about managing my affairs of money as I would do formal education, I think I am in junior primary. I'm just using that example to say, I think I know little. Therefore, I have an interest to try to improve it. Or I think I know at a senior primary level, maybe I need to move to, tertiary. So the same thing is for an individual to say, but they have an idea of, they feel they don't know, because that makes you interested in learning. So you can learn it that way. Another way we can learn, there is wonderful programs that are designed for us by our regulators. For example, the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, one of their mandates is to make sure that financial education and financial literacy improves in SA. They've put a number of modules on their website, for free. Then another way to learn is the amazing way we do on our show, where we unpack it and you listen to a show such as ours, you pick up ideas, you watch TV, you pick up ideas, you pick up a newspaper, you read it. You're just curious to know what does this mean. And I just want to give a practical example why this is important. I was thinking about it before this and saying, I think it's such an interesting way to think of it in a way. And, we're not judging. We don't judge you on our show.
Sure.
So we're not saying, bad for you if you say my level is equivalent to senior primary. I really don't know much about it, right? We're not judging you. Why it's important is this. Many people make mistakes because something like forex trading, something like Bitcoin, something like investing in shares, deciding whether you're going to buy a banking share versus a retailer share. In other words, I'm going to buy Nedbank versus I'm going to buy Pick and Pay. Or if you are comparing Pick and Pay, ShopRite, those are all opportunities, right? You can invest in those on the stock exchange. Decisions along that, taking money offshore, is the rand weakening, is the strength. Some of those big, those for me, they are so complex and so high level. You really should only consider such big decisions when you have the basic from your knowledge. It's almost like you can't just come from, ECD and go straight to senior primary. There's a big gap. So when you don't know what you don't know, often you make big mistakes. Like you put money in something that turns up, this was a scam, this forex thing. And the reason is you don't understand how investments return or how interest is generated when you invest in products, and what sort of interest do I expect from a bank account? What sort of interest do I expect from a mining share versus a clothing company like Truett? Or what sort of return do I get if I buy money in company like GIBS, like sort of dispensing medicine, then it's a bit of a retailer. So that lack of knowledge leads you to dealing with complex issues because you just don't know, and often you get your hands dirty.
Sure.
So just saying, where am I? Is very important. That's why we are very keen to hear from our listeners. Where do you think you are? How do you learn? And your question in the introduction. Most important, how do you help your kids learn? Because you must break that cycle of having generations of family members who have very low levels of financial education.
Sure.
Its impact on their capacity to build wealth.
Yeah. And the time right now is 23 minutes to 9 o'clock. You are on 702. Let's walk the talk. And I'm talking to Dr. Frank Magwegwe. You know him very well. He's a regular on the show. It's on Financial Matters. He's the head of financial wellness and advisory at Nedbank and GIBS faculty member. And he's joining us to talk about access to financial education. Where are we? And we are trying to gauge ourselves, all of us, without being judged, without necessarily telling everybody else. But where do you think you are if we were to use the typical education system as a guide, juxtaposing it against where we are? Where would you think that we are? Where do you think that you are right now? Are you at ECD, at crèche, at theater school? You are starting out, kindergarten. You are really starting out. Is that your level of financial education? Or are you at primary school? You know a little bit, and you are learning to read and write, and you are learning to understand the numerics and everything else. Or are you at high school? Now you're about to make serious decisions about your future. Or perhaps you are at tertiary level with your financial education. You know what you are doing. Of course, you'll make mistakes here and there, but you've got everything else covered. If someone were to ask you about this, you'd easily answer about that. I'd love to hear from you. Where do you think you are? The number to dial is 011-883-0702. 011-883-0702 if you are listening from 702 Land. And if you are listening from Cape Talk, the number to dial is 021-446-0567. 021-446-0567. I'd love to hear from you as I'm talking to Dr. Frank Magwegwe, who's the head of financial wellness and advisory at Nedbank and GIBS faculty member. Dr. Frank, then we agreed that we don't know what we don't know. But I'm sure there must be key indicators that tell me that I really do not know. There must be some telltale signs. If I don't know perhaps inflation, if I don't know this, that or the other, is there a measure that would guide us to really determine where we are? As I've just asked the listeners, where are they? Are they at crèche, primary school, high school, or tertiary? Do we have such indicators?
We do. In fact, researchers in this field, like me and other places across the world, they actually came up with 3 simple questions, and many governments adopted those as a measure of financial education. So the first one, you were spot on when you spoke about inflation. So just an understanding, we often ask a question that says, if you've got 100 Rand in an account today, right, and inflation is 7%, will you be able to buy more goods and services, less, or the same? So that's a question we need to check if you understand, if a consumer understands the impact of inflation on their money. That's one. Another one measures understanding of interest rate. It simply says, if you put 100 Rand in a bank account today, and the interest rate is 10% per year, at the end of the year, would you have 110 rands, more than 110 rands, or less than 110 rands. So it measures understanding of interest rates. So one is called the big three financial education questions. One measures inflation. The second one measures interest. The third one measures understanding of don't put your eggs in one basket. You know, our Abokoko, they always used to say that to us. And how do we do it? We just a question that says, is it safer to buy shares in a single company or to buy a unit trust that gives you exposure, say, to 20 shares as opposed to buying shares in one company? And that is trying to measure a consumer's understanding of diversification. In SA, only 4 in 10, roughly, 4 in 10 South Africans are able to answer those questions.
Oh, no.
Say we've got low levels of financial.
That's 25%.
That's what 4 in 10, about 40%.
Oh, 4 in 10, not 1 in 4.
Yes.
4 in 10.
Yeah, 4
you
in
see,
10,
now I'm
yes.
exposing my maths literacy.
I think I'm the one who said in my net. It's 4 in 10. I misled you.
Sure,
So our consumers can even think about that. Do they know whether it's less risky or more risky to buy shares in one company versus buying shares in 10 companies, right? How inflation works and how interest rate works. So those are measures that are simple to kind of check where you are. And the nice thing is it's done across the world, so then they're able to benchmark SA against other countries based on answers to those 3 questions.
And if I know all those, Dr. Frank, does it mean that I am best positioned to take smart decisions? And by smart, I don't mean flawless, because there will always be flaws, we'll always make mistakes. We may often call it wrong. Even the best soccer player at times has got a bad day in the office. But are we most likely then to be financially savvy, and would the results thereof be practical and visible and pragmatic in our everyday financial lives?
Absolutely. So there's a direct link that tells us people with higher levels of financial knowledge, right? What we do see in their day-to-day managing of their money, they certainly manage it better than people with low levels of financial knowledge. And you're quite right there to say to us, everyone has a bad day in the office. In other words, we don't always do what we know is right, right? So we know we need to walk, maybe we mustn't spend too much time on social media, or maybe, we shouldn't really be swiping that credit card, but sometimes we do it, right? So human beings often have what I call the knowing-doing gap. So even in the presence of a knowing-doing gap, I know what's right for me, but I'm just going to do it for now. I'm just going to have that extra cookie as an example.
Yes.
So, so I'm a victim of that because I love cake and cookies, and I'm always saying, let me just have this small one, then I'll run tomorrow.
There's your flaw there. There's your character flaw, yes, Dr. Frank.
We all do, yes. So even in the presence of those knowing and doing gaps, people who score higher on those 3 questions that I mentioned, when you look at their credit reports, when you look at do they have emergency funds or not, when you look at their contributions to pension funds, for example, you find that their behavior is different from people with very low. And therefore, that is why we making this call on this show to say it's in everyone's interest to just know a little bit. It's almost like if you know a little bit about different types of food, you know about protein, you know about carbohydrates, you know about fat, you know the importance of vitamins, for example. Generally speaking, you're a little bit more mindful when you eat than somebody who doesn't know at all. So the same applies to managing our finances.
And 15 minutes to 9 o'clock, Dr. Frank Magwegwe, my guest. I'd love to hear from you. If you want to send a text, feel free to do so on 072 702 1702. That's 072 702 1702. You can also send a voice note to that very same number that I've just given to you. However, if you want the good doctor here, the professor, to, as you've just called them, to, you are called that. That is not even me. On social media, on Twitter, people are saying, oh no, pass our sentiments to the professor to get well. We didn't know that he's not immune to physical ailments. We thought he was all powerful. So they're sending warm sentiments. Your wonderful listeners here.
That is lovely.
Yes,
and
yes.
You know, as I'm listening to you, I just want to give you a practical example because you're really pushing me to break it down as you on our show for our listeners.
Yes.
You know, I want to show you practically one of the ways that low levels of financial knowledge are detrimental to us. So listen to this. When I say to you 0.25%, 0.25% or 0.5%, is it small or is it big to you? That's on top of your mind. Does it sound small when you compare, say, to 1%?
Yeah, it's at the top of my. It sounds small.
Yeah, it sounds small, ne?
Yeah.
And here's what I want to tell you: the difference when you have a car over 48 months or 72 months of 0.25% versus 0.5% is tens of thousands of rand.
Oh my goodness!
When you apply that to a home loan of R1 million or R1.5 million over a 30-year period or over a 20, you're talking hundreds of thousands of rand. So when we talk about knowledge on interest rates, we're talking about a consumer who says, wait a minute, I'm going to shop around here. If they offer me a bond on 8.25% versus 8.5%, they understand that difference, if you look small, 0.25%, is hundreds of thousands of rand over a 40-year or 20 or 30-year period that is a bond.
My goodness.
See the impact of that lack of knowledge that we don't see, but we pay more in interest rates. I just thought that's an example that might help our listeners kind of connect to the detrimental impact of lack of knowledge or lower knowledge.
And listen, Doc, I have to concede. Perhaps I have to be the first in the queue to concede that I am in not even primary school. I'm in crèche with this one. I'm in crèche on this one. So if you are listening, please do not hesitate. And that's why we have these sessions, because we want to be better. Because we want to grow and we want to know more. And we don't know what we don't know until we know what we don't know. So let's get into that thing. And this brings me to this question to you, Doc, which might seem as though I'm slightly digressing, but I'm also posing the question to our listeners who are listening in droves and in huge numbers right now. To what extent does our fear / egos get in the way of really cultivating more information, going out there to access education? Because I might be a marketing manager of this big company and I might feel that, no way, I don't need that. This is needed by someone who is beneath me. As far as careers.
That's a wonderful question.
These impediments that stop us from acquiring this knowledge and admitting that we don't know. Is it ego? Is it status? Is it fear? What is it? What is it, Doc?
All of the above. What we see in our work, whether I'm running sessions for entrepreneurs, at GIBS, or we are running sessions as part of our mandate as a bank, at Nedbank, what we often see is we go into a company and middle to senior level of employees, they don't come because they're saying, this is for the junior level. I can't sit with them and be told how to budget. Because it's shame immediately comes to mind. Then what we also see, even if it's not a grouping, in other words, where you are helping a group of people learn a little bit about managing their finance, at an individual level, think about yourself. I know I was in that boat many years ago when I started working, 2002. I felt, how can I not know this?
It's
shameful. I cannot go and ask anybody. I should have known how a credit card works. I didn't. I swiped my credit card and it got full so quickly. I didn't know how it works. And I just said, but I'm expected to know. So shame, fear of ridicule, are some of those factors that that stops people from acquiring. Another factor is people often say to themselves, they even hear the voice of that school teacher saying, you're not good at math. We often hear people tell us, but I am not good at math. I can never understand these things. I've never been good at math. That's why they don't check their bank statement regularly. That is why they're not interested in learning more around finances. So you are spot on. There really is an element of one challenging themselves and say, I'm not going to be held back by fear, by shame, by stigma, by money is a taboo topic. If I'm not well, I try to learn more about what ails me, like umkhuhlane. I'm saying,
sure.
Why didn't you give me antibiotics? And the doctor said, no, it's a viral cold. So we don't need to give you antibiotics. So we need to approach financial education the same. I mean, you don't know, and I didn't know. I have a PhD, but I said to you, why aren't you giving me antibiotics? We should have that same approach to financial education. No one is judging you. It's for your interest. So you are spot on that fear, shame, ridicule stops us. And you know the worst thing is that by you not learning, because you are putting those stumbling blocks in front of you, you are impacting your family, your loved ones. Because if you're not eager to learn, you're not going to talk about the topic. You don't want to find out what you know. So you never talk to your kids about it. You perpetuate this generational passing on of low financial educated. So we need to break through, the fear of ridicule and the shame associated with not knowing what you think people know. Many people, they don't know. They just don't go around telling you.
Certainly.
I went with people in private banks, and I was surprised that their answers to those 3 questions that I've shared with our listeners earlier. People in banking, they can't answer those 3 questions. What more someone who is not even exposed to
Exactly. You know, Doc, that's very important. And I don't want to drag you onto the political fora because I know you are financial people. You want to steer very clear from politics and everything else. But I want to somehow appetize you somehow to touch on it, even if you'd have to be very careful. We often speak about economic freedom in our lifetime.
Yes.
And I am wondering how critical is financial education prior to economic freedom or simultaneously, and what benefit would financial financial education and financial literacy pose upon the quest for economic freedom?
It's a strong foundation. Let me give you quick examples, because human beings like to say, it will never happen to me. There was something wrong with that person. We all know in SA, the majority of our lotto winners, within a decade or so, they are back to where they were before they won the lotto. 30 million, 40 million rand. What does that tell us? It tells us a person had a lot of money that they won, but because of low levels of financial education, some mistakes around how they're managing the money, in other words, financial behavior, they find, and it's a global phenomenon. It's not only in SA. Many lotto winners die poor, right? And for me, that is one example that shows us the need for financial education that can influence financial behavior. Let me give you another statistic. It came out last week. Do you know, Tabo, that right now as we speak, the top 5% earners in this country, people earning 600,000 and above, 1 in 4 of them are behind their debt repayments. 1 in 4.
Oh no, really?
Of the top earners, so that our listeners can understand. It has nothing to do with earning a lot of money.
Yes.
It's about financial knowledge and financial behavior. So we need to combine. For us to attain economic freedom, we need to, get opportunity to start businesses, opportunities to prepare ourselves for high-earning careers, but at the same time, we need the foundation of just being taught the basics of managing money. How many soccer players do we know? Celebrities in South Africa who end up in financial distress, and there is on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, can you raise money for them to go to hospital? Yet in their peak, they were earning lots of money. That shows to some extent, low levels, right, of financial knowledge.
Sure.
So I hope those examples really show that with economic freedom, we need a strong foundation of just the basics of management, even not only amongst individuals, even when we have entrepreneurs who come and do some of our programs at GIBS, like finance for entrepreneurs.
Sure.
You find someone who doesn't know the difference between revenue and expenses, or between revenue and profit.
Goodness me. And that equips you.
Needs financial education.
I'm glad that you raised that, Doc, but simply put, you are saying one shouldn't wait to be a top earner. You shouldn't wait to earn over 600,000 to 2 million rands per annum before you concern yourself with financial education. A couple of text messages that have been coming through here, Doc, and let me just quickly do justice. One of the most pressing ones is asking, can Dr. Magwegwe please recommend a book, a website, or anything that we can go through in the meantime to arm ourselves with some financial education?
Oh, lovely, without a doubt. So I don't want to put pressure on myself. I have enough pressure already, because I'm also working on a very simple personal finance book, but it's not out there yet. Here is what I would recommend, my dear friend, my official friend. Do yourself a favor, get yourself a simple copy that really breaks down what you are talking about. The language is easy to understand. It's simply called Maya on Money, M-A-Y-A, Maya on Money. And there's also a website with the same name, mayaonmoney.co.za. That is an unbiased source of financial education, and the book plus the website is an absolutely good start. I have a few things also on my website, frankmagwegwe.com, blogs and all that. But really, if you want a structured one, mayaonmoney.co.za. Get the book and go to that website. A fantastic source that I recommend.
And of course, frankmagwegwe.com.
Yes, I have blogs. I've got a couple of things there. And I'm working on my simple workbook on personal finance. Now that I've said it, pressure 702 listeners. In a couple of months, I want to publish that.
Please do. We are eagerly waiting. But before we say goodbye, as tradition would dictate on this show, you have pearls of wisdom at the tail end of our discussion. I leave it all to you.
One prescription. I'm saying to you, you're sitting there, 702 and Cape Talk listener. You say to yourself, oh, I don't know how to cook. I want to be a better cook. You would go and seek information to improve your cooking skills. Please do the same to improve your financial education. There is no financial well-being with low levels of financial education. So seek out opportunities to grow your level of financial knowledge.
Dr. Frank Magwegwe, it's always a pleasure talking to you. We really appreciate your pearls of wisdom, and you break it down so easily for us, and we are not intimidated by the money jargon. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. That's your favorite there, Dr. Frank Magwegwe, Head of Financial Wellness and Advisory at Nedbank and GIBS faculty member. And he was sharing with us some serious, perhaps not fashionable, but very critical issues that have to do with financial education. That's where many of us sit back and we don't want to expose our ignorance, lack of knowledge in this area, because we're thinking, I should be knowing better.